Hi, I'm Chuck Bentley, CEO of Crown Financial Ministries. Thank you so much for joining us. Recently, many of our partners and supporters from around the world were able to gather for the first time in 4 years. We hadn't met since COVID. It was an incredible time of looking at where we've been as a ministry, hearing the stories of all God has been accomplishing, and looking ahead to where He's leading us into the future. Now, some of the highlights in this video that we've prepared for you. First, you'll hear from Peter Greer of Hope International. He'll be talking about the importance of collaboration. Then you'll hear from Tuff Harris of Crow Nation, who we partner with to serve the Native American community. You'll also learn more about the Restoration Path program, and you'll hear 2 remarkable testimonies of transformation from some of the participants in the program. Finally, we'll share the incredible story of how God is opening the doors of opportunity for us to serve entire nations in Africa. We believe the impact has the potential to become historic. Now, I hope you'll stay tuned through the end of this video to learn more about how you can support these exciting opportunities. Then be sure to explore some of the additional videos that will dive deeper into who we are and what we're doing. I invite you to join us on the incredible mission of delivering freedom, restoration, and flourishing.
The world's greatest economic challenges aren't due to a lack of resources, but rather due to a lack of understanding of what we already have and how to manage it well. Since 1976, Crown has taught millions of people where to find the answers: the Bible. Crown helps people reconnect with biblical principles so that they can experience freedom from pain and move into a life of flourishing. These principles are for everyone and affect every aspect of our lives: finances, career, marriages, identity, and purpose. We have consistently seen that biblical stewardship leads to human flourishing and God being glorified. Individuals, families, and communities can flourish, and now entire nations. Governments of entire nations are now contacting us and wanting us to train their leaders in these stewardship principles, combining stewardship of the land with God's financial principles. Join Crown as we train more leaders to bring hope and freedom to people all over the US and around the world as they discover who they are, what they have, and how to best use both.
I'm going to talk a little bit about our history, share with you where we have been and where we're going, and then I want to make a case for what I think is possible if we will stand united. We started in 1976. That was the year Jimmy Carter was elected president. Steve Jobs started a company with the icon of this little apple that was a bite out of the apple. It was called Apple. People thought it was weird. It looked like Microsoft was going to, dominate the world in computer technology. And Steve Jobs was just a startup in 1976. Sylvester Stallone made the movie Rocky. Can you hear the song playing in your head as he runs up the stairs? I was a freshman in college in 1976. I hadn't even met Ann in 1976. Not until she walked into class 2 years later and sat in front of me did my life change meeting Ann. But in 1976, at age 37, Larry Burkett stepped out of his work as a leader at the Space Center and started Christian Financial Concepts. I had the privilege of knowing Larry for 3 years of my life. And in one conversation, he said to me, he weighed what to do with his life. And he said, Chuck, I believe what God has called us to do is more important than putting a man on the moon. And that was coming from somebody who did put a man on the moon. Think about that. He helped the astronauts get to the moon. That's a pretty heady achievement. And then he evaluated what God wanted to do with his life, and he didn't want to stay and continue to do that. Now, when you look at that quote by Larry, I would say it was absolutely true then and is still true today. Has your life been changed by somebody landing on the moon? I mean, it's a great human achievement. But think about the difference in Larry's life multiplying into millions of people who are being set free, learning to be a steward and to be prepared for eternity with the Lord. It is a huge, huge accomplishment. And so when Larry started in 1976, it was a very humble beginning. I looked back in some of the original products that Larry produced. We were distributing our messages with cassette tapes. We were using overhead projectors. If you'll go to the next slide, the overhead projectors, if you remember those, you used to put one little piece of film on there and try to get it in view. And Larry would have stacks of those, and people would be sitting in that audience, looking at that little projector of some of God's words on it. And then Larry started in radio, but that was before cable TV. It was before internet and certainly before mobile phones. And with just that humble beginning, Larry was able to spread God's message all over the world. I felt so privileged to know him and to spend time with him and to talk with him about the call on his life. And I had no idea that one day that I would be following behind Larry, carrying on his legacy. So many of you are in this room because of him. And he's been with the Lord for 20 years. And yet what he started continues to carry on and impact people. It's remarkable to me. I used to think if you die that your impact is over. But it may just be beginning. Because you set in motion multiplication. You plant seeds that grow later. And so it's not over when you think it's over. The one constant for us is the message of freedom. God has used us to spread freedom all over the world. I just finished this book, which will be available, I think, tomorrow or Saturday, called Freedom from Poverty and Riches, the remarkable story of Crown's mission to spread financial freedom across the world. And I wrote it as a thank you to all of the people who make that possible. You, the donors, the teachers, the budget coaches, the small group leaders, the people who deliver our services, that interact with the people who we're helping. And one of the things that's so remarkable to me is how far and wide we're known around the world. Everywhere I go, somebody knows about us. They have heard of Larry, they've read a book. Someone is here in this room who said 35 years ago, they were impacted by Larry's ministry. They decided to see if anything had changed. So they came back after 35 years. They're in this room right now. But it's freedom to fully allow God to use you for what he created you to do. So much financial teaching just starts from where a person's at to get them to a healthy retirement. Have you ever thought about how much time and energy goes into that effort? And how temporal that is? I tell the story, my father plays cards at 90 every Friday with a group of his friends, and they gamble quarters, nickels, and dimes. I was raised gambling, the same thing. It was his entertainment. And he was telling me last year that one of the guys he gambles quarters, nickels, and dimes with is worth $100 million in our little hometown. And I said, well, Dad, how old is he? And he said, well, he's, like 90. And I said, well, he's not going to be worth $100 million long. And it turned out I was right. Think about that. There's so much energy going into the temporalness of money, and very few people saying this is tied to something much greater. This is the test drive. This is the dry run. You're auditioning for your eternal job. And that's what we need to help people to see. And so We have been on that journey, but we're growing and we're changing right now. I tell our staff all the time, growing and changing is hard, but it's sure better than the alternative, shrinking and not changing. That's a pretty dangerous combination. But when you're in mission, we make our plans, but God directs our steps. And we have to be responsive to what God wants us to do. And He's been directing our steps. And I want you to understand what we're changing, who we are today, where I believe the Lord has taken us. And I want you to leave here knowing how you're a part of that story. That stronger together means you. Whatever part of that story you have, whether you're a board member, a financial supporter, a budget coach, whatever that may be, whatever you're doing, we want to help you understand the potential that exists if we stand united. So we revised our vision and mission statement, and I want you to take a good look at it. This is new as of April when our board approved this change. Our vision is that we envision a world filled with people or individuals, families, communities, and nations flourishing through the principles and practices of biblical economic solutions. And our mission is to advance proven biblical solutions to economic challenges. Now, there's a couple of things that are substantial there. The first is we have historically been teachers of God's financial principles. And we added to that the practices. So we view the principles as the what. That's what we're supposed to know and what we're supposed to do. We view the practices as the how. How do you help someone to apply that? And when you put the principles and the practices together, you have a solution. And so we're not just teachers now, we're also teaching and training. I like to say God has called us to be leaders, helping other leaders take this content, this material, and spread it around the world. And so our role is to take those principles and help create solutions. So let me give you a practical example, what that might really look like. It's one thing to tell a person you're a steward of the land, that God owns everything. He owns the land. He owns your finances. He owns your time, your talent. It's one thing to say that. It's another to show them how to live that out. That's why having a partner that teaches people how to farm puts that into practice. The principle is God owns that land. It's not yours, it's His. He will own it forever. The practice is how do you be a good steward and have it increase its yield? And that exists in everything that we're trying to do. That's a big shift for us. But we're going to remain focused on these three outcomes. Not just freedom, but we also want to focus on helping people to experience restoration and then ultimately to flourish. It's one thing to be free. Let's say that it's someone is trapped financially, and we help them to become free. It's a wonderful thing. But there's more to that. When you put it into practice, you also now begin to become restored. You begin to leave behind the past and to rebuild your life, to move into stability. And then from there, you begin flourishing, which means shalom has come into your life, and now you're giving back. There's fruit growing on your tree, and others now are benefiting from your life. And we're going to talk about a lot of the things that we do when we're together. And I don't want you to lose sight of this slide. These are the outcomes. If you ask somebody that has had exposure to something that we're offering in their life, one of these words usually come out of their mouth. That they, the before and the after, I was this and now I'm this. It'll usually be one of those three. And that's based upon research of asking the people who've been involved with us, what difference does it make in your life? It's going to be one of those three. And so with all of our planning, all the programs you're going to hear about, all of the great testimonies, you will hear that common theme. And that's what guides us. That's what we want to continue to do today.
So here's my invitation for you today. I would love to invite you into the small steps of kingdom collaboration. And the first one is real simple. It's time. We always have more to do than time to do it. And what does that do? It causes our focus and our attention to be inward, to focus on the bounds of our organization. But what would happen if you said, I want to tithe my time to bless other organizations? What if you actually created space in your calendar to say, how can I bless other organizations? And maybe it's as simple as in your sector, find an organization that is smaller or a startup and could be seen as a rival. Start meeting with those individuals and say, how can I encourage you? How can I bless you? How can I help? Friendship is an incredibly powerful tool of the church that I think we need to rediscover. And it doesn't happen when we look at other organizations as rivals. The second is information. What would happen if we actually open sourced everything that we possibly can? What would happen if when another organization reached out to us, we had a posture of, yes, I would love to share that. You know, when I started at Hope International, we did not have an employee manual. And I thought that was maybe important. How do we create an employee manual? So I reached out to a friend, his name was Eric, and I said, Eric, we don't have an employee manual. And so he said, well, here is mine that we have for our organization. And I did Control F, find, and then replace, and I did the name of their organization with Hope International. 15 seconds, we had an employee manual on that. But what would happen if we were just radically generous and open-handed? Like, what do we have that might be a help? What do we have? And how can we share that? What if we took a posture of generosity with the information that we have? The third is our language. What if we changed our language and instead of answering questions with, let me tell you about how we're better, bigger, faster, what if we stopped using words that end in ER? Actually, partner ends in ER. I got to rethink that. What if we thought about the words that we use and instead did not take the bait to talk about us versus them and said, no, there is us. And I would love to tell you about what we're called to. I'd love to tell you about our mission, but I'm not going to do it in a way that will tear down anyone else who's part of the family. What if we changed our language? And what if we were radically generous with our platform? What if we started saying, how can we highlight other organizations? This might be crazy, but hypothetically, what if an organization like Crown invited another nonprofit leader from, say, Hope International to join their event? That's crazy, Chuck, and I love being here. But what if we were radically generous with our platforms and said, let's come on, let's come in, let's highlight other kingdom work that we love. At every single event that we have with Hope International, we do work internationally. We started profiling an organization that does good domestic work and telling our supporters about them because we believe that it's not here or there, but we're called to Jerusalem, Samaria, and the ends of the earth. So we want to celebrate that. What if we creatively thought about being generous with our platform and our money? What if we actually gave to other organizations that they would seem as rivals? What if we actually started being generous? When the book came out, we got some funds that came from that, and I think it's the most high-impact philanthropy I've ever been a part of. But we took that money and we just sent it with checks to organizations that are in a similar space, and the response was crazy. The response was overwhelming on that, but it was this powerful statement of, no, we see the good work. We celebrate that, and we're in this together. And then what would happen with our prayers? I'll never forget when we got prayer notes from another nonprofit organization that's in the same space, and they just were handwritten notes and saying, we are praying for you, the team at Hope International. What if we became radically generous, praying for God's blessings on the organizations in our space? Here's what I think would happen. If we take those steps, if we apply them in our life, we would find the word rival replaced with a better word, a friend. We would realize we are in this work together. Kingdom work would expand, and it would be incredible. I want to close with just a prayer that the Apostle Paul, who knew rivalry, by the way, he talked about his conflict with Peter. He talked about other individuals that were preaching Christ out of envy or rivalry. He understood rivalry, but at the end of the day, this is his prayer. His prayer is this. He said, this is Jesus, even better than Paul. But this is it. You're blessed when you can show people how to cooperate instead of compete or fight. That's when you discover who you really are and your place in God's family. And can I just say one more time, as an endorsement of Chuck and the Crown team, you are living this out. You have found your place in God's family. You have invited me in. You have invited so many partners. And the result is this: the kingdom is going to expand. Come quickly, Lord Jesus. Thanks.
When we've been doing work on the reservation for the last decade or so, we've encountered so many problems. And I grew up in poverty, and the word marginalized, I didn't even know was a word growing up on the reservation. When you're in the marginalized community, you don't call yourself "we are the marginalized." You just hear things, and you hear how people treat you and how they look at you. You have a feeling of how the world outside there is. And so I grew up in this community, and I didn't realize the severity of poverty or the severity of these problems. But as we've been doing work for the last 10 years, we're realizing that on the reservations, it's an upside down poverty. You see, a lot of times when you travel to the rest of the world, some of the issues that can make a huge impact, like drilling a well, getting quality water resource to people is huge. It can change almost everything. Getting shoes, getting clothes, getting knowledge to them to teach them how to farm. Those things make huge impacts. And on the reservation, those attempts have been made as well. But drilling a well has not moved the needle in poverty. And knowledge, the education system, a lot of it's free for Native Americans. A lot of what's been done in some of these third world countries, it's an upside down poverty on the reservations, because we try those same things on the reservation and we're realizing we're not finding any lasting effect in a positive way. You see, the logistics of going to a third world country is very difficult. What to do is hard. Going to the reservation, it's different. The logistics are easier because we're within the boundaries of the United States of America. We can make a way. There's roadways that go through every reservation. And if you're going to go on a mission trip, you can just get in a van and go. And it's very difficult to find out what's the problem, what are we solving, what are we trying to do on the reservations. When Chuck and Andre came, they've asked so many questions. They didn't tell us of all the principles they know. They didn't tell us of all the programs that they have. They asked way more questions than they offered any advice. And they got to know us. But they moved from knowledge to self-control. It's easy to go to the reservation and judge what's going on. You see something and you're like, why don't these people just? They move beyond that with perseverance. They've come back so many times. And all the partners, and many of you know it, they spend an incredible amount of time with you because they love you, because they're family. They don't say, hey, we got a good program and it's our mandate and it's virtuous to do it. They come because they believe that you are their brother or their sister. And they've moved into that brotherly affection all the way to love. We would jump in front of a bullet for each other because we love each other. And when you can do that, and when you can give your best, and when you can wish the people that you're working with the same that you would wish to your son or your daughter, it changes the game, and it helps. You see, when we started our program, I left playing professional football in front of hundreds of thousands, if not millions, watching on TV. And we started a program in our first class that came through our discipleship program. We had 2 people. One dropped out, so we had 1 guy. It was one-on-one discipleship. I left the lights and the millions and all that stuff to people who thought I was crazy. But I shared the glory that God had had in my life with one person. His name was Merville. He was our first warrior. He was our first guy to pour into. His dad died when he was 3. His mom rejected him. He was from a family of 19. He was forgotten. He was neglected. He was abused. He was homeless when we found him. He was living out of his car. And we took him in and we said that there's more. There's more than enough. There's more than enough of the glory of God in your life that can change your finances, that can change your life, that can change everything. And slowly, little by little, he started believing it. And when he believed it, it started changing him and changing him. It wasn't the program, it was just the testimony of who God is in our life. And it is more than enough for you. And he believed it. Today, he's married. He has a son. He has a business that he's starting, and he's being planted back on the reservation as a leader. He's a board member on a nonprofit. He's doing all these things, and he's flourishing, and he's sharing the glory of God with others. He's changing everything. His son will always have food, will always have a father, and will always have a family. Merville had a chance because he has a family, not because he had a program, not because he had money poured his way, but now he knows that the glory of God can change everything, and it has united us. It can unite you. It can unite you with all the people you're working with. Let us move from virtue and faith to brotherly affection and love. And when we go to serve people and love people, it'll change everything. It'll change a life.
When you think of any community in America that's underserved, you have a lot of poverty, a lot of brokenness. Everyone's looking for something that can actually have an impact on young people who are really broken. Hope is really at the bottom of all of this. And from what we've seen and how we've been a part of the development of Restoration Path, this is the solution.
On my first day of Restoration Path, I was a little unsure. I was very depressed, and honestly, I just didn't want to hear anything about God or the Lord. I wanted to end my life, and yeah, I was just struggling, really.
So I did have a relationship with God, but as I grew up, I think the realities of life really pulled me away from church. You know, I was in the military and school, and in high school you don't really want to go to church and everything. You're trying to figure out your identity, and I think that's where I fell off. And then I got pregnant, and then I realized
everybody's story is different, but the effects of trauma are the same.
I was just getting on my feet. I just always moved house to house, and I was finally getting into stable housing. I just heard about the curriculum and just about Crown and what they were doing, and I thought it was exciting that they picked us, and I just think it brought stability and the willingness to learn a little bit more about myself and just what God has to offer, not the world.
I've just seen them really look back at their past and examine it in a new lens and realize there has been some pain, but that pain can teach you a lot, and God can use it for His good, for His kingdom.
When I think back specifically about Sandra, she kind of just sat there and she wasn't overly engaged. And since then, the Lord has truly done an amazing work in her, and she has really let Him in and has allowed the healing process to begin.
As I went through the program, I learned that I'm very strong, I'm independent, I'm smart, I can be bossy. I know what my purpose in life is now. I got closer to the Lord. I committed to a church, got baptized. I applied to school, and I got accepted, so.
There was a point where I was at my lowest. I was homeless for a time period. My daughter was about 6 months old. I couldn't afford childcare, so I came back to the point, and then that's when you guys were doing the program. And Amy and Dwayne, they prayed over me, and not even an hour later, a child care facility had called me and let me know that they could take her in.
These girls, they come a little apprehensive. There's a lot on their shoulders, and there's a lot of hopelessness. And then you see the smiles, you see the hopefulness. It's incredible.
My relationship with God definitely has grown. I got the opportunity to do verse memorization. I was able to connect with God through that and just use it in my everyday, whether it was to myself or to my daughter. And just teaching her that was super important to me, because she kind of caught on to some of them, and it just encouraged me to teach her.
They are raising up a new generation, and they want to make some new adjustments in their own life that will affect their kids for good.
This was a great program that helped me, and I just think it allowed a major sisterhood with people that go through the same thing I am, and you can really create that safe place and environment and understanding, because now you don't feel judged because there's females going through the same situation as you are, and now you feel like you have your own little family and people you can trust and confide in when things aren't going the right way.
So what can we give them that we know that we're covering all the bases? They will know who they are in Christ, that they were created and they have a purpose. They'll know and get an understanding of their background and how that's affected them, and what God has given them to be able to break any single challenges in their lives.
I can see that restoration path really could be used almost anywhere. Who doesn't want to know, who am I? Why am I here? What is my purpose? Those are all questions we all want answered.
We have a lot of churches that work with us, and we actually want to invite them to see how they can utilize this as people are coming off the streets to church. We also have the Juvenile Detention Center that's invited us to serve, and then we have the schools. A lot of students are just broken, and they are not ready for a future. And we're saying, hey, we have a tool that has proven very successful, and I just think the more students that get to go through Restoration Path is the more we can be confident that they actually have the tools, they have the truth, they have the messages, and if they accept it, they can go off and flourish.
I've seen it work. I've seen it change perspectives and, restoring them to a sense of hope and a future for people that just couldn't see past the next day. And it's been incredible here at the Point. So right on cue, Sandra, who has the same personality as Chuck, said she would like to go first. And I said, of course you would. So she had alluded to this a little bit in the video, but prior to taking Restoration Path, she had been in a tough place in life. So she's just going to talk a little bit about that. And also, how was it for you? How was your restoration process as you took the curriculum? How was it before, during, and how is it now?
Okay, hi, I'm Sandra, for those who don't know me. I'm just going to give you a little background story, like where I grew up at. I'm from Akron, PA. I currently live in Downingtown. Akron's not a bad place, but the environment that I was in was bad. I was around drugs, alcohol. I experienced mental, physical, sexual abuse, and it was just really rough growing up. I was just basically living day by day, living on edge, basically. And I got pregnant with my daughter, Jayliana. She's my mini twin. She's very bossy. She doesn't take no for an answer. And yeah, she has my attitude. And she's 3. So I just needed a change in my life. I always knew the Lord, but I only called on him when I really needed him. Because I had a heated argument with him. It was like, why would you bring me into this world if, I'm just going to be suffering? And he blessed me with my daughter. And at the time, going through the Crown session, I was going through a lot. I was basically homeless. I didn't have a job. I was a stay-at-home mom. And I was very depressed. I was really in a dark spot. And I basically didn't have nothing. And going through this program, just I grew closer to the Lord, and I'm just so thankful for it. And Curtis asked me, what's your purpose? Why are you here? And my only answer was to be a good mom to my daughter. And he was like, no, I gotta be more than that. I'm like, I don't know. But going through this program, I figured out what my purpose was. I grew stronger, closer to the Lord. And, I basically got blessed with a car. I got an apartment of my own. I'm going to school, and I'm going for child psychology. And the reason why I'm going through child psychology is because I want to work with kids one day. I want to be their guidance. A lot of kids don't get that at home, and I see that, and I've been through that, and I just want to be there to help them and guide them. And yeah, I'm just thankful to be here, and hopefully I have a job opportunity soon before I walk off this stage.
And just to note, while she was going through the curriculum, she did her homework every week. She had her verses memorized, and then she would yell at everybody else if they weren't on point as much as she was. So I didn't really have to lead because she kind of took that on. But thank you, Sandra. This is Erica, and I wanted to just bring up a particular time that was super special and something that will always be in my memory forever. We were on week 3, and it was the start of Where Are You From? So it was actually the hardest week because they had to go all the way back to their past and remember some things that they had blocked or pushed down and hadn't thought about in a really long time. And I just remember at one point, it was getting really deep and heavy, and Curtis started singing, Hallelujah, Hallelujah, and he just kept going. And Erica left for the bathroom, but her weeping and her wailing was so painful. It was reverberating through the walls, and we could hear it, and our hearts were broken. So I just wanted Erica to share what made her so emotional at that point.
Good evening. So I'll just give you a little background of just the question, where are you from? Okay. If anyone were to ask me a general question, where are you from? I would give them the answer of, I'm from Parksburg. I come from a big family, from a single mother. I come from Puerto Rican descent. That would be my general answer. Through Crown, we dove deeper. They asked, where are you from? Close your eyes. What are you surrounded with? What does your environment look like? And who's there? My environment, going back, was very difficult. I attempted suicide a few times. My household was chaotic. It was violent. We had the police come in and out all the time. We didn't have stable housing. Go house to house, whether it was by myself or with my family. We would get evicted all the time. We didn't have utilities, didn't have water, electric, no food. That's where I was from. Then I got pregnant when I was 17. And of course, I decided to keep my daughter. I was with her dad, and we felt like we were married. In our minds, we were married because rules were not my thing. Then June 2021, he passed away, and everything was still chaotic. I would tell God that I hated him. I was very angry, and I didn't go to church. And I was very hard-headed. My sister, she attended Young Moms, and I was not a fan. I would make fun of her for going. But one day I went to Young Moms, and I shared a little bit about myself. And I didn't go every week, but I would go sometimes. Then we started the Crown curriculum. That's when we started chipping away at the hard places. It was pretty neat to see because I went through the curriculum with my sister. We were in the same environment, different mindsets. It was a very special bonding time between my sister and I, and between the other girls. Curtis sang Hallelujah, and what stuck with me, he said, let go of something you've been holding on to. And what I've been holding on to, I was praying for my daughter's dad to come back. And I prayed every day for him to come back. And then I opened up, I let go. I stopped praying that. I stopped praying that he would come back. And I had to accept it, that he was not going to come back. But I would see him again. At that point, I felt restored. And after that, I went every week. I completed every week of Crown Restoration. I didn't miss a session. And I memorized every verse. And I was very committed to it. Because I wanted to learn. I wanted to learn about who I was. And who I'm destined to be. What did the world set me up to be? Who did God say that I am? Then, during my time at Crown, I got baptized. I dedicated my daughter. I started volunteering at church. I got my own house. I started my real estate courses, and I'll finish in November. And throughout all of this, it was the relationship. They could have given us a curriculum. Here you are. There it is. Good luck. But Curtis and Melinda and the rest of the team, they continued to come back. They decided that this was important. They left their families, left whatever they were doing, to come and help restore us. Tina Bear, Ron Bear, Amy and Dwayne Walton, and rest of the Point staff, they walked alongside of me to make sure that I was restored. And now I can say the question of, where are you from? And my definition now, I am from one true God who loves me, has a purpose for me, has a purpose for my daughter, who will not fail me, will never abandon me. He's a forgiving Father.
The first time in my life, I understood why, apart from the resurrection, that the feeding of the 5,000 is mentioned in all four Gospels. It's the only other story, apart from the resurrection, that's consistent in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I was standing in front of people that were hurting. They weren't just poor, they were suffering, and I didn't have anything to give them, and there was no way that I was going to come over and start teaching without trying to do something to help their circumstance. And I realized the deep empathy and compassion the Lord had when people are hungry, and He wants them to be fed. And what we were able to do was to assess the circumstances and to discover what farming methods could be revised so that without bringing emergency food relief, which is what some agencies do and are doing, we're bringing a long-term solution. You know, we've been given so much, and we're called to be stewards of all that we have, so that, not that our lifestyle just keeps getting better or more comfortable, but so that we share abundance with the world, and we do it to bring Him glory.
Well, here we are right outside the palace in the capital of Madagascar. Craig and I were invited to meet with the president to help alleviate human suffering and hunger in this nation. It's been an unbelievable trip, wouldn't you say, Craig?
Yeah, and we just know that you guys are all a part of it. We know that you're supporting us back at home. Just a really grateful thanks to all our I Was Hungry donors.
Yeah.
And thanks. We're privileged to be a voice for the voiceless.
Amen.
And what an honor it is for us to be serving, but with your incredible support.
Well, we're so excited that the president actually gets it. He understands us. He understands the importance of agriculture and good stewardship. And he's given us an incredible welcome. And it's made possible by you. We just hope that you will feel the great joy we've felt in serving God's purposes in Madagascar.
I Was Hungry is going global, and it's our privilege to be representing you in these countries in Africa. God bless you all.
Thank you so much.
So this was birthed in Zimbabwe in 1982, so it's over 40 years old. And we never, ever got traction from the government. Sometimes they could see the success, but they just weren't interested, and they never, ever wanted to embrace it. In fact, they actively discouraged it. They thought perhaps we were just a couple of guys trying to get our farms back who had some ulterior motive. But in 2019, Zimbabwe hadn't fed itself for 20 years. And in 2019, Zimbabwe suffered an incredible drought, worse than the region. And I was watching this during the rainy season. It was like there was a thumbprint over Zimbabwe. Our neighboring countries were getting rain, and we weren't. And you know that passage we all know when if you humble yourself and pray, God will heal your land. It's 2 Chronicles 7:14. If you read 2 Chronicles 7:13, God says, I will withhold the rain so that you will be humbled. And so that 2019 was just an incredibly bad drought. And then through Twitter, of all things, somebody had taken a picture of 2 side-by-side crops. One was flourishing and one was dead. It didn't come from us. It was somebody in the country. But they credited us with it. And the next thing, the permanent secretary, who's a Twitter guy as well, he suddenly got hold of me. And he said, what is this? And so I shared it with him, and he caught it. And he said, right, I've got this. I want to make this a national policy in Zimbabwe. So the team in Zimbabwe are very experienced, and they're really good, fantastic trainers. There's a beautiful stewardship center there. So the team in Zimbabwe got busy, and they trained the senior extension officers in Zimbabwe. The team there is only 15 trainers, but they managed to train trainers that went and trained others and trained others and trained others until 1.8 million households were taught the very basics of what the methodology is. It wasn't very deep. It didn't go into the biblical side of it, but 1.8 million households responded. And from 2019, where the country produced 780,000 tons of maize, in the year 2020, due to that faithful little team in Zimbabwe, the country produced 2.7 million tons, a 4-fold increment over one season. And so that is where the government was able to see, yes, this does work. And it's just by modeling. That's how Jesus did it. You model, you show. We had, because we had been not acknowledged for all those 40 years, but I had a feeling in my heart around that time, I thought, we're in a Joseph season. If you serve and you just carry on serving and you carry on serving and you carry on serving, eventually Pharaoh calls you. And that's what happened.
So a couple of points is that we are not uncoupled from the gospel. What Craig and I have realized is that our uphill battle is we're not going to ever take the gospel out of the technology. Because what has to change is the heart on the inside. And you can grow all the food, teach all the budgeting, teach all the financial principles, but until the character is changed, there's no real transformation. And in every meeting and every encounter, we have not compromised one bit to say this is about God's plan for the poor. This is for His glory and for His kingdom. And so we're facing an uphill battle. The United Nations awarded them the Farming Trainer of the Year award. They called them to Rome, Italy, and said, you're the best farm trainers in the world. And I thought it took them way too long to figure that out. They were just nominated for one of the world's top environmental prizes. We had scientific calculations done, and they're helping to save the earth by a huge margin, by no plowing, no burning, no chemicals. And there's not a single Christian on that selection committee, and so they did not get the award. So we're not going to get the attention of the world. But I would just ask you, Craig, when we say we think God's doing something historic among His people for His glory, do you buy into that, and how do you see that happening?
Yeah, we serve a supernatural God. He can do anything. And I'm just so privileged to share Chuck's vision that the 600 million farmers in Africa and 1 billion small-scale farmers in Africa can bring the revival that the whole world needs.
Yes.
And I'm just so delighted to be in Crown's coattails, following, watching what's happening, serving this great community in Crown.
Let's give Craig a big hand. Thank you, Craig. Well, I hope you've been blessed as you've watched enough of these highlights to know God is moving in incredible ways through your partnership with Crown. We've been able to share just a glimpse of the exciting opportunities that are underway today. Now, your help is more crucial than ever before. I truly want you to join us. I'm asking you to invest in the expansion of our world-changing mission. At the event, our partners who were there got so excited that they pledged $554,000 between now and the end of the year. And they're challenging you and our other partners in ministry to match this amount before December 31st. It's really crucial to us. So would you consider making a gift today to help us meet this goal? Your gift will provide freedom, restoration, and flourishing to countless individuals and communities across the U.S. and around the world. You can scan the QR code or click the button below to make a gift today. I want to thank you, and may God bless you and your family.